Hi there, Zam here for NerdTube. These are my thoughts and spoilers of The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 7 and 8. Episode 7 is called The City of Walls and Secrets, and Episode 8 is called Truth and Consequences. This is a double bill. Reason being is that what happens in Episode 7 has a big part to play in Episode 8. We see a character called Senator Tucci. She's somebody who we saw in the Clone Wars. She's like a young blue girl and stuff like that. If you remember these sort of blue-looking people, I'm not talking Avatar here. Then yeah, she represents that race. We saw them predominantly in the Clone Wars, and actually this felt like a Clone Wars episode simply because there's no Bad Batch, there's no Crosshair. The only representation of the Bad Batch series is Admiral Rampart, and he's trying to cover his tracks after what happened on Camino last season, where he basically decimated Camino. And now people like Tucci, she wants to hold Rampart accountable, especially after she gets some information from some clones who are being popped off, who know that Rampart basically committed those atrocities. We find out who this person popping off all these clones are. He happens to be an assassin who's also a clone, but he's a true believer, and he kills himself after Rex comes in to the rescue to save Senator Tucci after her guards have all been taken out by the assassin clone trooper. And it's really cool how this clone trooper kills himself after Rex brings him down. He chews on that sort of Sith cyanide tablet thing. I think we once saw it in The Mandalorian, so it's good to see it again in this show too. And as I said earlier, he's a true fucking believer. He believes in the cause, even if though it's against his own people, because there is, in a way, regarding both of these episodes, a setup to do harm to the clones. And Senator Tucci wants to represent the clones because the clones have no representation in the Senate. And she also believes that Rampart was the person who destroyed Camino. She just needs to prove it. And this is where we get into episode 8, where the Bad Batch have been called in by Rex to prove that Rampart was the person who committed the atrocities on Camino. They know that he did that because they were on fucking Camino when it happened. So they come into Coruscant. They come in obviously undercover because they wanted men for deserting the Empire, and we get obviously some nice action scene moments, and we also get some good moments within the Senate as well. Omega, she's starting to understand more about the politics because she hangs around with Tucci, and she also sees Rampart, but Rampart doesn't recognize her. It's some nice moments here, and eventually the Bad Batch do get the information they require to hold Admiral Rampart accountable, and they bring that information into the Senate, and then Senator Tucci exposes him, and this is where we finally see, after a long time, Emperor Palpatine. He comes up from the ground, from his office, which is obviously underneath the Senate thingy, and he comes up, and he basically played both sides like he'd done in the prequels. He wanted he wanted the Bad Batch, he wanted some outside force to expose Rampart because he wanted to get rid of the clones all along. And in a way, the Bad Batch have basically put a death sentence on the clones, and because Palpatine has wanted to get rid of the clones, he then throws Rampart under the bus as the person to take the fall for all of this when Palpatine wanted to do this, and then he's able to now to bring in his new project, which is the Imperial Stormtrooper. Da, da, da. It's absolutely crazy. I hope I've tried to make as much sense of this as possible in a short space of time. But this is who Palpatine is. He's always a step ahead of of everyone within the game, and he's very good at playing both sides, which is what he did right here. It was really good stuff. Nevertheless, as this episode comes to an end, Echo realizes that he needs to hang around with Rex and save his fellow clone trooper brothers, because some of these clone troopers, they're no longer under the spell of Order 66, and they're waking up and realizing that they've been had all along. And Rex and Echo, being two people who know the truth, they decide to team up. So Echo is leaving the Bad Batch. This obviously makes Omega very sad because she's like losing a family member, like an uncle or something along those lines. And it's nice to see Echo and Omega embrace, as they say goodbye. It was very sweet, very touching, very eye-watering. But life goes on, people do move on, and I think that's what this episode was trying to say as well. Just when you initially think that somebody like Echo is going to be with us for the long haul, maybe throughout every series of Bad Batch, nope, he's got other things to do, and there are bigger fish to fry, and saving his brothers from the spell of Order 66 is something he feels obliged to do, and it was very good to see. So who's going to replace Echo? Will it be Crosshair? Is he coming back? Maybe it's Sid. You know, he should come in there with her fucking claws coming out and stuff like that. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see if they do get a replacement for Echo. I do feel like, you know, with him not being around, that space is going to be vacated, and they need somebody with a like a droid arm to unlock doors and stuff like that. Echo's ability just to do that alone was very handy, no pun intended. All right, let me know what you think of this particular episode. I thought it was great. I'm going to give episode 7 a 6 out of 10. I didn't think that was that great, honestly. I actually dozed off watching that episode. No Bad Batch meant it wasn't that interesting, regardless of them trying to make it interesting. I mean, it doesn't have to have the Bad Batch in to be a good episode. It just, but for some reason, without the Bad Batch, it ended up being a shit episode, because what they gave us to replace episode 7 with was just not good enough. Rampart can't hold an episode on his own. He's just not good enough. And his other characters we don't give a fuck about. So, yeah. Even Rex coming in to save the day, it just wasn't good enough. Episode 8, once we get back to our familiar faces again and the gang's all here and everything, yeah, it was great stuff. And knowing the twist with Palpatine at the end and Echo leaving the crew, yeah, it was a great episode with all these other bits and bobs stuck in there. It's just great. I liked episode 8. So episode 8 will, for me, gets a 9 out of 10. You know, just to see Palpatine come back as well, and hearing Ian McDermott's voice again. I'm sure that was him. It sounded so much like him. It was great to hear. So yeah, let me know what you think of these episodes. And by the way, as a double bill, I'm going to give the double bill a 8 out of 10. So yeah, just as a little bit of balance there. It was a good double bill. I'm very happy about this. I mean, in a way, Disney needs to do more of this. They need to give us, you know, sometimes like a couple of episodes at once. Like the recent episode of The Last of Us, episode 4, it really needs an episode 5 to go along with it, because episode 4 is the setup. Probably episode 5 will be the execution of what the setup was giving you. And this was like that in the Bad Batch. Episode 7 was the setup, and episode 8 was the execution. And so it made it much more palatable to watch this double bill like that. So sometimes some episodes are just not necessarily fulfilling, and you need to give us a second episode to give us that payoff. And I'm hoping Disney will do more of this in the future with all their shows, not just the Bad Batch. Anyway, let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube, the greatest YouTube channel you never heard of. Take care. Bye bye.